Imagine descending through the ocean, light thinning out, colors fading, the world slowly turning into shades of blue and black. Your breathing is steady, bubbles drifting upward like tiny silver balloons, and the seafloor finally comes into view. You expect sand, maybe rocks, maybe something that looks like it crawled out of a nightmare and wants rent money. What you do not expect is a shoreline, right there, underwater. A clear boundary where one liquid ends and another begins, complete with shimmering waves that look suspiciously like a lake you might skip stones across back on land. Your brain pauses. It does a quick systems check. This is the moment where reality taps the microphone and says, "Hey, so I am about to do something weird." If this slow explanation of why lakes exist at the bottom of the ocean helps you unwind tonight, please like the video, subscribe to the Deep Sea Documentary channel, and leave a comment sharing when and where you're listening, so this calm science can reach more people who fall asleep to the secrets of the deep. This is the strange first encounter many deep sea explorers describe when they come across lakes at the bottom of the ocean. Not puddles, not illusions. Actual bodies of liquid sitting calmly on the seafloor, behaving like lakes despite being completely submerged beneath thousands of feet of water. It feels like discovering a waterfall inside a swimming pool. Everything about it looks wrong. Yet there it is, minding its own business, as if underwater lakes are the most normal thing in the world. The surface of these lakes can ripple and shimmer, reflecting light from submersibles in a way that tricks the eye. It creates the eerie sensation of looking at a mirror placed on the ocean floor. The boundary is so sharp that it resembles a beach. Sometimes, with what looks like waves gently lapping against the surrounding seabed. Except there is no sandcastle potential here. This is a shoreline that quietly ignores the laws your intuition grew up trusting. From the very beginning, this site forces a question that hooks scientists and casual listeners alike. How can there be lakes inside an ocean? We are taught from childhood that liquids mix. Pour water into water and you just get more water. Simple. End of lesson. Gold star. But the deep ocean, as it turns out, did not attend that class and has been freelancing ever since. What makes this discovery especially powerful is how ordinary it looks at first glance. There is no dramatic explosion or alien glow, just a calm, glassy surface that looks familiar enough to feel comforting, until you remember you are several thousand meters below the surface and nothing about your surroundings should be comforting. The ocean floor is supposed to be the ultimate rule follower. Cold, dark, high pressure, same old watery deal everywhere. And yet, here it is, breaking expectations with the confidence of someone who knows they will never be grounded. Early explorers described a deep unease when they first encountered these features. Your eyes insist you are seeing a lake. Your training insists that lakes belong on continents, surrounded by trees and mosquitoes, not in eternal darkness beneath crushing pressure. The brain, caught between those two ideas, starts quietly panicking. This is the kind of moment that reminds humans we do not just explore the ocean to learn facts. We explore it to renegotiate our understanding of reality. And that is why underwater lakes are such a perfect story to begin with. They are not just scientific curiosities, they are visual riddles. They challenge one of the most basic assumptions we carry, that the ocean is a single, continuous body of water. One giant, connected soup. But here, right from the opening scene, that idea cracks. The ocean reveals layers, boundaries, and hidden structures that feel more like geography than fluid. mountains, valleys, rivers, and now lakes, all tucked into a place we once dismissed as empty. There is also something quietly cinematic about these lakes. The deep sea already feels like another planet, and this discovery doubles down on that feeling. It is the kind of reveal that science fiction writers wish they had thought of first. A diver hovering above a silent, deadly lake, its surface shimmering like polished glass, the surrounding darkness swallowing the edges of the scene. If there were eerie background music, no one would question it. This chapter sets the emotional foundation for everything that follows. Before chemistry, before physics, before microbes and methane, there is wonder. The moment of seeing something that should not exist and realizing it absolutely does. These lakes force us to confront the idea that nature does not care what feels intuitive. It only cares what works. And sometimes, what works looks like a lake hiding at the bottom of the ocean, waiting patiently for someone to stumble upon it and rethink everything they thought they knew about water. So we start here, standing on an impossible shoreline, underwater, staring into a lake that does not belong. And once you see it, there is no unseeing it. The ocean has officially shown its hand, and it is holding way more cards than we expected. Once the initial shock wears off and the brain stops yelling, the next question sneaks in, quietly but insistently. What exactly is this lake made of? Because despite appearances, this is not just regular ocean water politely sitting in a bowl. These lakes have a name, and that name is brine pools. And the word brine is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, quite literally. Brine is water that has taken salt and said, no, no, keep going. It is water so saturated with salt that it becomes noticeably heavier than the seawater around it. If normal ocean water is a mild broth, brine is the kind of liquid that could cure meat, pickle vegetables, and probably judge your life choices. The salt content is extreme, far beyond what fish or humans would consider reasonable hydration. To understand why this matters, we have to talk about weight, but not in the bathroom scale sense. Liquids have density, which is basically how much stuff is packed into a given space. Add salt to water, and you are adding more matter without increasing the volume very much. The result is water that weighs more per drop. It is the same reason the Dead Sea lets people float like confused inflatable toys. Salt changes the rules. In the deep ocean, this difference in weight becomes critically important. When a pool of water is significantly denser than the water around it, it does not mix easily. Instead of blending together like milk and coffee, the heavier liquid sinks and stays put. Gravity looks at the situation, nods approvingly, and says, yes, this makes sense. The brine settles into low spots on the seafloor and behaves like a lake, because functionally, that is exactly what it is. A heavier liquid sitting beneath a lighter one. This is where intuition really struggles. We tend to think of water as a single category. Wet is wet. But the ocean operates more like a layered cocktail, with subtle differences in composition creating invisible boundaries. In this case, salt concentration is the key ingredient. Enough salt, and suddenly, water stops acting like water and starts acting like something closer to liquid rock syrup. Not sticky, but stubborn. What makes brine pools especially strange is that they maintain a distinct surface. The boundary between brine and surrounding seawater can be so sharp that it looks like a line drawn with a ruler. That sharpness comes from the massive density difference. The lighter seawater essentially floats on top of the brine, unwilling to sink into something heavier than itself. The brine, meanwhile, has no interest in rising. It is perfectly content being the bottom layer, like the world's saltiest basement. And yes, all of this happens while everything involved is still technically water. No solid walls, no membranes, just physics quietly enforcing order. It is a reminder that the ocean is not uniform. It is stratified, layered, and full of micro-environments stacked on top of each other like a very wet layer cake. The salt itself often comes from ancient geological sources, but the important takeaway here is not where it came from. It is what it does. Salt changes water's behavior so dramatically that it creates a separate liquid landscape, a place where waves can form, reflections can appear, and boundaries can persist for years without dissolving away. If water had personalities, brine would be the friend who refuses to mingle at parties and insists on sitting alone, radiating intensity. There is also something deeply ironic about salt playing this role. Salt is usually associated with preservation and stability, and here it is doing exactly that, preserving the structure of these lakes. Without such high salinity, the pools would slowly mix with the surrounding ocean and vanish. The salt is what gives them identity. It is the reason they exist at all, quietly anchoring them to the seafloor. From a storytelling perspective, brine pools flip a familiar idea on its head. We are used to thinking of lakes as fresh water surrounded by land. Here, we have ultra-salty water, surrounded by more water. It is a lake that exists not because it is isolated from the ocean, but because it is too heavy to join it. That twist is what makes brine pools such a powerful concept. They are lakes born not of separation, but of excess. So when we say there are lakes at the bottom of the ocean, what we really mean is that the ocean has learned how to hold itself in layers. It has found a way to divide without walls, to create structure without borders. All it took was salt, gravity, and a complete disregard for what humans find intuitive. And just like that, the ocean went from soup to syrup, and nobody asked our permission. To understand how brine pools come into existence, we have to stop thinking of the seafloor as a flat, boring parking lot and start thinking of it as a leaky, layered geological machine. Beneath that quiet, dark surface is a complex network of rock, sediment, and ancient material that has been accumulating for hundreds of millions of years. And hidden inside some of those layers are enormous deposits of salt, leftovers from prehistoric oceans that evaporated long before dinosaurs ever considered stomping around. These salt deposits did not start out underground. Long ago, shallow seas covered large parts of the planet. Over time, those seas evaporated, leaving thick layers of salt behind, like a bathtub ring on a planetary scale. Later, tectonic shifts buried these salt layers under sediments, locking them away beneath the ocean floor. They sat there patiently, doing absolutely nothing, which is salt's favourite hobby. But the earth is never truly still. Water slowly seeps down through cracks in the seafloor, finding its way into these buried salt layers. And water, when it encounters salt, does what it has always done throughout history. It dissolves it. Drop by drop, molecule by molecule, salt begins to disappear into the infiltrating water, transforming it into brine. This is not a sudden event. There are no dramatic explosions or geysers. It is a slow, almost lazy process, unfolding over immense stretches of time. As the salt dissolves, the water becomes increasingly saturated, turning denser with every grain it absorbs. Eventually, this briny mixture becomes heavy enough that it wants to move, but instead of rushing upward like a geyser, it seeps. It oozes through porous rock, creeps along fractures, and migrates slowly back toward the seafloor. Picture the planet gently perspiring, exhaling salt water through microscopic pores. Earth, it turns out, sweats. When this brine finally reaches the surface of the seabed, it does not erupt. It spills quietly. The dense liquid spreads out and settles into natural depressions in the seafloor, places shaped by currents, landslides, or tectonic movement. Over time, as more brine seeps upward, these depressions fill. The result is a pool, stable and persistent, fed not by rain or rivers, but by geology itself. What makes this process so fascinating is its patience. Brine pools are not born in a day or even a century. They form over thousands of years, sometimes longer, shaped by the slow choreography of water, salt, and stone. Every drop of brine represents countless tiny interactions between minerals and molecules. It is chemistry on a geological clock, ticking so slowly that humans only ever see the finished product. This also explains why brine pools are often found in specific regions of the ocean. They are tied to places where ancient salt deposits exist beneath the seafloor and where the crust allows water to circulate. Certain basins, ridges, and continental margins are particularly good at hosting these features. The ocean floor is not equally leaky everywhere. Some areas are sealed tight, while others are more like old plumbing with a few questionable joints. There is something strangely poetic about this origin story. These lakes are not created by surface processes like weather or erosion. They are born from memory, from oceans that vanished millions of years ago, leaving their salt behind as a kind of geological inheritance. When we look at a brine pool today, we are seeing the ghost of an ancient sea slowly reasserting itself through chemistry. The seepage process also means that brine pools can be replenished. They are not stagnant puddles doomed to evaporate or disappear. As long as salt continues to dissolve underground, brine continues to arrive. This steady supply allows the pools to maintain their volume and structure over long periods, making them surprisingly stable features in an otherwise dynamic environment. And here is where the humour sneaks in. While we worry about oceans rising, the ocean itself is apparently busy leaking internally, creating secret lakes from its own buried leftovers. It is like discovering your house has a wine cellar you never knew about, except the wine is extremely salty and will absolutely kill you. By the end of this chapter, the mystery has shifted. We are no longer asking how water can sit inside water. We are asking how deeply connected the ocean is to its own past. Brine pools are not anomalies. They are reminders that the seafloor is alive with slow motion processes, constantly reshaping the environment in ways that are invisible until they are suddenly, spectacularly obvious. The planet is not just a rock with water on top. It is a system that recycles its own history, dissolving, seeping, and resurfacing ancient oceans, one salty breath at a time. At this point, the obvious question becomes less poetic and more mechanical. If both the lake and the surrounding environment are liquids, why do they not just blend together and call it a day? Why does the boundary remain so clean, so stubbornly defined, that it resembles a shoreline instead of a smudge? The answer lives in one of physics' quiet enforcers: density. Not the flashy kind of science, but the kind that decides whether things float sink, or awkwardly hover in between, like they forgot what they were doing. Density is essentially a measure of how tightly packed matter is. Two liquids can look identical, feel identical, and still behave completely differently if one contains more mass in the same space. In the deep ocean, this difference becomes dramatic, because even small changes in composition can lead to large changes in behavior. When one liquid is significantly denser than another, mixing is no longer the default outcome. Separation becomes the rule. Imagine trying to stir honey and air together. You can wave the spoon all you want, but the honey is not interested in floating upward and becoming a cloud. Now imagine replacing honey with an extremely dense saltwater solution and air with normal seawater. The analogy is not perfect, but the principle holds. The heavier liquid resists being lifted, and the lighter liquid resists sinking. Physics once again chooses the path of least effort. This resistance to mixing is amplified by the calm conditions of the deep sea. Down here, currents are often slow and turbulence is minimal. Without constant agitation, the interface between the two liquids remains remarkably stable. The result is a boundary that behaves almost like a surface. Even though nothing solid exists there, it is a liquid-on-liquid border, enforced by gravity and density differences alone. That is why explorers describe these boundaries as shorelines. The edge is visible. The contrast is sharp. Light bends slightly as it passes through the density gradient, creating shimmering distortions that make the boundary easier to see. Your eyes interpret this visual cue the same way they would interpret air meeting water at a lake's surface. The brain does not care that both sides are liquid. It sees a line and labels it accordingly. What makes this even stranger is that the boundary can support movement along its surface. Small disturbances can create wave-like motions that travel across the interface. These are not waves in the traditional sense, but they behave similarly, rippling along the density difference rather than across an air-water boundary. It is the ocean performing an impression of a lake, and doing it convincingly enough to fool both humans and machines. From a physics standpoint, this is a beautifully efficient system. No energy is wasted trying to force incompatible layers to mix. The denser liquid stays low, the lighter liquid stays high, and the boundary remains intact. It is stratification at work, a process that governs not just brine pools, but atmospheres, lakes, and even stars. Layering is nature's way of keeping things organized without needing walls. There is also a stability to this setup that feels counterintuitive. You might expect the ocean to constantly stir itself into uniformity, but in reality, it often prefers order. When density differences are strong enough, they act like invisible barriers. Not absolute barriers, but enough to slow mixing to a crawl. In the case of brine pools, this means the shoreline can persist for long periods, maintaining its eerie clarity. This physics-driven separation explains why these lakes look so alien. We are accustomed to boundaries being solid. Land meets water, rock meets air. Here, the boundary is a gradient, a smooth but firm transition, enforced by natural laws rather than physical structures. It is a reminder that borders do not need fences to exist. Sometimes, all they need is weight. And here is the comedic twist. The ocean, a place famous for its ability to dissolve, erode, and blend, suddenly becomes incredibly picky. This water does not want to mix with that water. It is the aquatic equivalent of two people at a party standing on opposite sides of the room, both pretending the other does not exist. By understanding the physics of density, the lakes at the bottom of the ocean stop being magical anomalies and start being inevitable outcomes. Given enough salt, enough time, and calm enough conditions, water will happily divide itself into layers. It will create surfaces where none should exist, and shorelines where no land can be found. So when you see footage of a robot hovering above what looks like a lake on the seafloor, remember this is not a trick or an illusion. It is physics doing exactly what it was designed to do. Gravity pulls, density decides. And the ocean, once again, reveals that it is not chaotic by default. It is quietly, relentlessly organized. Even when that organization looks like a lake that wandered into the wrong biome and decided to stay. If you have ever watched waves crash against a shoreline, you know water loves to move. It swirls, sloshes, surges, and generally refuses to stay still. So it feels almost insulting that these deep-sea lakes just sit there. No waves crashing, no tides pulling them apart, no dramatic splashing. They behave like the laziest liquid on Earth, and the reason comes down to how they interact with motion itself. Ocean currents are driven by a combination of wind, temperature differences, and large-scale circulation patterns. Near the surface, water is constantly on the move, pushed around like a crowd leaving a concert. But as you descend deeper, that motion slows dramatically. Energy dissipates with depth. By the time you reach the abyssal plains, most currents are gentle, slow, and persistent rather than chaotic. This already creates a calmer environment. But calm alone is not enough to explain why brine pools remain so perfectly contained. The real secret is how density changes the way a liquid responds to force. When a current flows over a brine pool, it is essentially a lighter fluid sliding over a heavier one. The current does not dig in and stir the pool. It glides across the top, barely disturbing the boundary. Trying to move the brine would require lifting it upward, and lifting something dense takes energy. The deep ocean simply does not have enough spare energy lying around to do that casually. Think of it like pushing a refrigerator across a carpet. You can lean on it all you want, but unless you apply serious effort, it is not going anywhere. The surrounding seawater currents are more like a gentle breeze, enough to move leaves, not enough to relocate furniture. The brine pool, meanwhile, sits in a natural depression, further anchoring it in place. Gravity and geography team up to say, "Nope, you live here now." Another factor is viscosity, which describes how resistant a fluid is to flowing. Highly saline water tends to be slightly more viscous than normal seawater. That means it flows more sluggishly, responding slowly to external forces. When currents brush past a brine pool, the brine does not rush to follow along. It lags behind, content to remain where it is, like syrup, ignoring your attempts to stir it quickly. This sluggishness creates a kind of inertia. The pool has mass, weight, and resistance. It does not behave like a loose cloud of dye that instantly disperses when disturbed. Instead, it behaves more like a heavy liquid blanket pressed firmly against the seafloor. Currents slide over it, around it, and sometimes gently ripple its surface, but they do not carry it away. The shape of the seafloor also plays a crucial role. Brine pools often settle into basins, cracks, and low-lying areas. These natural containers shield them from lateral movement. Even if a current wanted to shove the pool sideways, it would first have to overcome the physical boundaries of the terrain. The result is a feature that is not only dense, but geographically sheltered. It is the underwater equivalent of a beanbag chair wedged perfectly into a corner. This stability has consequences beyond just looking cool. Because the pools stay put, they become predictable features of the landscape. They do not drift or spread unpredictably. They exist as fixed landmarks in an environment where almost everything else feels fluid and uncertain. For scientists navigating the deep sea, this reliability is rare and valuable. You can leave, come back years later, and the lake will still be there, quietly refusing to participate in oceanic chaos. And here is where the humor writes itself. The ocean is famous for storms, waves, and constant motion. Yet buried deep within it are these hyper-salty lakes that have opted out entirely. While the rest of the water is busy circulating around the planet, these pools have chosen a more relaxed lifestyle. They have found a spot, settled in, and decided that movement is overrated. This stubborn stillness also reinforces the illusion that these are true lakes. Lakes on land do not migrate. They stay where gravity put them. The brine pools mimic that behavior perfectly, not because they want to, but because physics demands it. Their density ties them to the seafloor like an anchor made of salt. So when we imagine underwater lakes being tossed around by currents, it turns out we are projecting surface ocean behavior onto a completely different environment. Down here, motion is subtle, energy is scarce, and heavy things do not budge easily. The brine pools know this. They take advantage of it. And in doing so, they carve out one of the most stable, stubborn features in one of the most dynamic places on Earth. The ocean may never sleep, but these lakes have absolutely mastered the art of staying in. If the idea of a lake at the bottom of the ocean already feels unsettling, the lack of oxygen inside these lakes pushes it straight into nightmare territory. Because while the surface may shimmer invitingly, crossing that invisible shoreline is often a one-way trip. Inside most of these brine pools, oxygen is either extremely scarce or completely absent. And for animals that rely on oxygen to stay alive, this is not an inconvenience. It is a full system shutdown. Oxygen normally dissolves into seawater from the surface, mixed downward by currents and circulation. But inside a brine pool, that process breaks down. The boundary between the surrounding seawater and the brine acts like a barrier, slowing the exchange of gases. Oxygen-rich water does not easily penetrate the dense brine below, and without that constant replenishment, oxygen levels plummet. The lake becomes chemically isolated, cut off from the breathable world above. What replaces oxygen is not emptiness, but chemistry that is actively hostile. These environments often contain dissolved compounds that react quickly with any oxygen that does manage to sneak in. It is consumed almost immediately, leaving the interior of the lake locked in a state scientists call anoxic. No oxygen, no breathing, no second chances. For most animals, oxygen is not optional. It fuels cells, drives metabolism, and keeps tissues functioning. Without it, cells begin to fail within minutes. Muscles weaken, nervous systems misfire, organs shut down. Entering an oxygen-free brine pool is like stepping into a room where the air has been quietly removed. There is no dramatic struggle at first, just confusion, disorientation, and then collapse. This is why brine pools are often described as death traps. Fish that accidentally swim into them may appear stunned almost instantly. Some sink, immobilized, unable to escape the dense liquid surrounding them. Others drift along the boundary, their bodies reacting to the sudden chemical shock. The lake does not chase them. It does not attack. It simply waits, and physics does the rest. The lack of oxygen is compounded by the extreme salt concentration, which wreaks havoc on biological systems. Cells are finely balanced machines, and sudden exposure to such conditions disrupts that balance catastrophically. Water rushes out of tissues. Proteins malfunction. Even if oxygen were present, survival would still be unlikely. The brine is not just suffocating, it is biologically unforgiving. There is something deeply eerie about this lethality because it is so quiet. No snapping jaws, no venomous spines, just a chemical environment that says, "You do not belong here," and enforces that rule without emotion. The lake becomes a place where life ends not through violence, but through incompatibility. This has led scientists to compare brine pools to underwater deserts or toxic pits. From the outside, they appear calm and undisturbed. Inside, they are lethal. The contrast makes them especially dangerous for creatures unfamiliar with the boundary. There are no warning signs, no sudden temperature change, just one wrong swim, and the rules of survival abruptly change. The comparison to a phone in a bathtub is unfortunately accurate. Electronics fail when water bridges connections that were never meant to meet. Animals fail in brine pools for a similar reason. The environment short-circuit systems evolved for normal seawater. Everything that usually works stops working, and it happens fast. What makes this even more unsettling is that the lake itself does not look toxic. There is no murky color, no bubbling menace. It looks like water because it is water. Our instincts fail us here. We are trained to recognize danger through cues like smell, color, or movement. Brine pools offer none of that. They are silent hazards, perfectly disguised as something familiar. From an ecological standpoint, these oxygen-free zones create stark boundaries between life and death. The surrounding seafloor may be full of activity, while the lake interior remains eerily empty of larger animals. It is a reminder that habitability is fragile. Change the chemistry just a little, and an environment goes from livable to lethal. So while underwater lakes might sound whimsical at first, Chapter 6 is where the tone sharpens. These are not vacation spots. They are chemical traps, shaped by physics and sealed by the absence of oxygen. Beautiful, yes. Fascinating, absolutely. But also deadly in the calmest way imaginable. The ocean did not build these lakes to be welcoming. It built them to remind us that water alone does not mean life. Just when it seems like brine pools should be completely lifeless, the ocean pulls another plot twist. While most animals treat these lakes like invisible cliffs, certain forms of life look at them and think, yes, this seems perfect. Inside these hostile, salty, oxygen-free environments lives a cast of organisms so specialized they make survival look like a niche hobby. These are extremophile microbes, and they are the reason brine pools are not dead zones, but strange, buzzing, biochemical cities. Microbes do not play by the same rules as larger organisms. They are not limited by lungs, gills, or even the need for sunlight. Where fish see danger, microbes see opportunity. The brine pools offer something rare, a stable environment with plenty of chemical ingredients waiting to be exploited. For life that knows how to use them, this is prime real estate. Instead of relying on sunlight to power photosynthesis, these microbes run on chemistry. They tap into reactions involving compounds dissolved in the brine and surrounding sediments, using them as energy sources. This process, known broadly as chemosynthesis, allows life to thrive in total darkness. No sunbeams required, no day or night cycle, just chemistry grinding away endlessly like a biological engine. What makes these microbes especially fascinating is how deeply adapted they are. Many of them have evolved cellular machinery that functions in extreme salinity. Their proteins are structured to avoid collapsing in salty conditions that would destroy most cells. Their membranes are reinforced. Their internal chemistry is fine-tuned to prevent dehydration. To them, the brine is not hostile. It is home. These organisms form dense microbial communities, often concentrated near the boundaries of the brine pools or within the brine itself. They cluster where chemical gradients exist, places where different compounds meet and react. To a microbe, a gradient is a buffet line. The more chemically interesting the environment, the more potential energy to harvest. What is remarkable is that these microbes do not just survive, they flourish. They grow, reproduce, and form ecosystems that are entirely independent of surface life. No sunlight filters down here. No plant matter drifts in to feed them. Everything they need comes from the chemistry of the Earth itself. It is life powered by the planet's internal processes, not its star. This has profound implications for how we think about life in general. For centuries, we associated life with sunlight, green plants, and warm conditions. Brine pool microbes blow that assumption apart. They demonstrate that life can root itself in environments that look utterly uninhabitable to us. Give life a steady energy source and enough time, and it will figure something out. There is also a strange humour in how welcoming these deadly lakes are to the right kind of tenant. While fish and crabs avoid the brine like it owes them money, microbes have moved in, redecorated, and established a functioning economy. They have turned poison into fuel and isolation into stability. It is the biological equivalent of thriving in a neighbourhood everyone else refuses to enter. These microbial communities are not just scientific curiosities. They actively shape their environment. Through their metabolism, they alter the chemical makeup of the brine and surrounding sediments. They produce byproducts, build structures, and influence which compounds accumulate over time. In a very real sense, they engineer their own habitat, subtly reshaping the lake from the inside. Studying these microbes has forced scientists to rethink the limits of life. If organisms can thrive in dark, salty, oxygen-free lakes beneath the ocean, then similar life could potentially exist in places once dismissed as barren. Worlds with underground oceans, chemically active crusts, or extreme environments suddenly seem much more interesting. But even without looking beyond Earth, these microbes are a reminder of something humbling. Life does not need comfort. It does not need beauty. It does not even need fairness. It just needs chemistry that works. And when it finds that chemistry, it settles in, adapts, and refuses to leave. So while brine pools may be death traps for larger creatures, they are thriving microbe metropolises. Cities built on salt and chemistry, humming quietly in the dark. Life, it turns out, does not just survive adversity. It sometimes prefers it. If brine pools were only strange chemically, they would already be fascinating. But the deep sea is never content with just one layer of weird. When light from a submersible or remotely operated vehicle hits the boundary between normal seawater and a brine pool, the scene starts to behave like a broken screen. Objects warp, edges ripple, straight lines wobble. It looks less like nature and more like a visual error, as if the ocean briefly forgot how to render itself. This unsettling effect comes from the way light travels through materials of different densities. Light does not move at the same speed through all liquids. When it passes from one medium into another with a different density and composition, it changes direction slightly. This bending of light is known as refraction, and at brine pool boundaries, it becomes dramatically visible. The boundary between the two liquids is not a sharp wall, but a steep gradient, where density changes rapidly over a small distance. As light crosses this gradient, it bends continuously, rather than all at once. The result is a shimmering, wavy distortion that makes the surface appear alive. It is the same reason objects look bent underwater when viewed from air. But here the effect happens underwater, without any air involved. Your visual system is not prepared for that. To a camera, the effect is mesmerizing. Laser lines projected across the boundary curve and twist. Robotic arms seem to stretch or compress as they pass through the shimmering layer. The lake surface looks like it is vibrating, even when the surrounding water is perfectly still. This optical illusion reinforces the sense that the lake is solid, even though it is entirely liquid. For human observers watching these feeds, the experience is deeply uncanny. Our brains rely on visual consistency to understand the world. When that consistency breaks down, alarm bells ring. The distortion makes it difficult to judge distance, shape, and motion. It feels like the environment is unstable, as if the laws of physics are temporarily negotiable. This visual strangeness has practical consequences as well. Piloting submersibles near brine pools requires extreme care. The refraction can make objects appear closer or farther away than they actually are. A robotic vehicle may think it is hovering safely above the surface, only to discover it has dipped a sensor into the brine. In the deep sea, misjudging a few centimeters can mean the difference between a successful mission and a very expensive mistake. The shimmering boundary also plays tricks on shadows and reflections. Light reflects differently off the brine surface, sometimes creating mirror-like effects that resemble reflections on a calm lake. Other times, the surface absorbs light, appearing dark and bottomless. The visual character of the lake can change depending on the angle of illumination, making it feel dynamic and unpredictable. What makes this even more fascinating is that these effects are not constant. They change with temperature, composition, and subtle movements in the water. A slight shift in the density gradient can alter how light bends, causing the surface to ripple visually, even when it remains physically still. It is like watching heat waves above asphalt, except the heat is replaced by salt and pressure. There is a quiet irony here. In a place defined by darkness, light becomes one of the most important storytellers. The way it bends and distorts is often the first clue that something unusual is present. Before instruments detect chemical differences, before samples are taken, the eyes catch the glitch. The ocean gives itself away through optics. These visual effects also contribute to the emotional impact of brine pools. Seeing footage of an underwater lake is unsettling, not just because of what it is, but because of how it looks. The shimmering surface triggers the same discomfort as a reflection that moves slightly out of sync. It is familiar enough to recognize, yet wrong enough to unsettle. From a storytelling perspective, this chapter is where science and sensation collide. The physics of light explains the effect, but the experience remains haunting. Even knowing what causes the distortion does not make it feel normal. The ocean still looks like it is breaking its own rules, and part of us suspects it might do something even stranger next. So when viewers describe the ocean as glitching, they are not being poetic. They are responding to a real, measurable distortion caused by a hidden boundary. Light, salt, and water conspire to create a scene that feels more digital than natural. And in the deep sea, where clarity is rare and certainty even rarer. That shimmering boundary becomes a visual reminder that reality down here operates on its own terms. From a human perspective, brine pools look ominous. We watch footage, hear the warnings, and think, obviously, do not go in there. Fish, unfortunately, do not watch documentaries. They navigate the deep ocean, using instincts tuned for a world where water is usually just water. And that is exactly why brine pools are so dangerous to them. These lakes do not advertise their lethality in a way most animals can detect until it is too late. Fish rely on a combination of senses to move through their environment. Vision helps, but in the deep sea, light is scarce. Smell and chemical cues play a major role, as does the lateral line system, a network of sensory organs that detects vibrations and pressure changes in the surrounding water. Together, these systems allow fish to sense predators, obstacles, and changes in currents. But brine pools are sneaky. They often fail to trigger any immediate warning signs. The boundary between normal seawater and brine can be nearly invisible in darkness. Without strong visual cues, a fish swimming along the seafloor may encounter the edge of a brine pool without realizing it. To the fish, it feels like entering the same environment it has always known. There is no sudden temperature shock, no dramatic turbulence, just water. Until suddenly, it is not. As soon as a fish crosses into the brine, its body is hit with conditions it is not built to handle. The dense liquid resists movement, making swimming feel sluggish and unresponsive. Fins that normally generate thrust suddenly feel ineffective, as if the fish is trying to swim through molasses. This loss of mobility alone can be disorienting, triggering stress responses that further impair escape. At the same time, the fish's internal balance begins to unravel. Fish maintain a delicate equilibrium between the salts inside their bodies and the surrounding water. Crossing into an ultra-salty environment disrupts that balance instantly. Cells begin to lose water, muscles weaken, and coordination falters. The fish may become stunned, floating or sinking helplessly within the pool. The tragedy is that many fish do not die immediately. Some linger at the boundary, partially immersed, struggling to free themselves. Others sink deeper, where escape becomes increasingly unlikely. The brine's density prevents them from rising easily, turning the pool into a one-way slide. What looked like open water moments before becomes an inescapable trap. Over time, these accidents accumulate. Brine pools often contain the remains of fish and other animals that made the wrong swim at the wrong moment. This gives the lakes a grim reputation among researchers. They are not predators, but they function like them. Passive, silent, and devastatingly effective. The efficiency of these traps is what makes them so unsettling. There is no pursuit, no chase, just an environmental mismatch that the animal cannot overcome. Evolution equips organisms for typical conditions, not rare chemical anomalies. Brine pools exploit that blind spot perfectly. This phenomenon also highlights how finely tuned marine life is to its usual surroundings. Fish can handle pressure, darkness, and cold that would crush humans instantly, but change the chemical makeup of the water just enough, and even these masters of the deep are helpless. It is a reminder that survival often depends on very specific assumptions about the world. Break those assumptions, and the system fails. From a broader ecological perspective, these accidental deaths create localized effects. The presence of trapped or deceased animals influences who visits the edges of the pools and how energy moves through the environment. The lake becomes a focal point, not through active predation, but through inevitability. Mistakes happen. The brine is always ready. There is something deeply uncomfortable about this kind of trap, because it feels unfair. The fish did not make a poor choice in the way we think of choices. It followed its instincts in a world that usually rewards them. The environment changed the rules without warning. And that is perhaps the most important lesson of this chapter. In the deep sea, danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it looks like open water. Sometimes it shimmers beautifully. And sometimes it is a lake that does nothing at all, except wait. The discovery of lakes at the bottom of the ocean did not begin with a grand plan to find something impossible. It began, as many great scientific moments do, with people looking for one thing and stumbling into something far stranger. Early deep-sea expeditions were focused on mapping the seafloor, studying geology, and cataloguing life in places humans had barely seen. The idea that an actual lake could exist underwater was not high on anyone's checklist. As submersible technology improved, scientists gained the ability to spend longer periods exploring the deep ocean with greater control and clearer visuals. These vehicles, piloted or robotic, descended into darkness carrying cameras, lights, and sensors, acting as mechanical eyes in a place humans cannot survive unaided. They were designed to observe, not to be surprised. The ocean, however, had other plans. During one such exploration, researchers noticed something that did not make sense. The seafloor appeared to dip, and in that depression was a surface that reflected light differently from everything around it. At first, it was assumed to be a trick of the light or a camera artifact. Deep-sea footage is notorious for illusions, but as the submersible approached, the feature did not vanish. It sharpened. Pilots described the moment with a mix of disbelief and excitement. The vehicle hovered above what looked unmistakably like a shoreline. The surface rippled. Objects dropped toward it behaved oddly. The scene looked so much like a lake that some researchers joked they expected to see trees along the edge. The humour was a way of coping with the fact that nothing in their training had prepared them for this. Scientific caution kicked in quickly. Instruments were lowered. Sensors measured unexpected differences. The data confirmed what the eyes were seeing. This was not an illusion. It was a real, persistent body of liquid distinct from the surrounding ocean. The realization spread through the control room with the energy of a collective double-take. Someone, somewhere, probably said, "That should not be there." What made the discovery feel mythical was the way it emerged from the darkness. The deep ocean already carries a sense of the unknown. It is vast, poorly mapped, and hostile to human presence. Finding a lake down there felt less like discovering a new species and more like uncovering a hidden city. The comparison to Atlantis was inevitable, not because of ruins or architecture, but because of the emotional weight of finding something legendary where nothing was supposed to exist. These moments are rare in science. Most discoveries are incremental. A new data point, a refined measurement, a subtle shift in understanding. But occasionally, science delivers a scene so visually and conceptually shocking that it feels cinematic. The discovery of brine pools was one of those moments. It forced researchers to pause, reassess, and rewrite assumptions in real time. The submersibles themselves became characters in this story. Machines designed to observe quietly now found themselves hovering over something profoundly strange. Pilots had to resist the urge to get closer too quickly, balancing curiosity with caution. There was a real risk of damaging equipment by entering an environment no one fully understood yet. Even robots, it turns out, have to mind their boundaries. News of these discoveries spread through the scientific community with a mix of excitement and skepticism. Some researchers initially questioned whether the features were transient or unique. Follow-up dives confirmed they were neither. These lakes were stable, repeatable, and very real. What began as an oddity quickly became a new category of deep-sea feature. Looking back, it is easy to romanticize the moment. But at the time, it was also deeply unsettling. Science is built on frameworks, and brine pools did not fit neatly into any existing box. They forced geologists, chemists, and biologists to talk to each other, to connect dots across disciplines. The ocean had presented a puzzle that refused to stay in one field. That is why this discovery still resonates. It is a reminder that even in the age of satellites and sensors, there are places on Earth where entirely new landscapes wait in silence. Places that feel ancient, hidden, and almost mythological, until a beam of artificial light reveals them. Finding lakes beneath the ocean did not feel like solving a problem. It felt like opening a door no one knew was there. And once opened, it became impossible to pretend the ocean was simple ever again. Wherever energy collects in the ocean, life follows. And brine pools, despite being deadly to many creatures, unintentionally create exactly that. A reliable concentration of food. Along the edges of these lakes, a peculiar community forms, one that thrives not inside the brine, but right at its boundary. This narrow strip of seafloor becomes a feeding ground, a place where opportunistic animals gather like customers lining up at a food court no one asked for, but everyone uses. The logic is brutally simple. Fish and other animals occasionally wander into the brine pools and become incapacitated or die. Their bodies drift or settle near the edges, creating a steady supply of organic material. In the deep sea, where food is often scarce and unpredictable, such consistency is rare. For scavengers, brine pool shorelines are a dependable buffet. Crabs are frequent visitors to these boundaries. They patrol the edges cautiously, keeping their bodies safely in normal seawater while reaching toward the brine with surprising precision. Their movements suggest experience, as if they have learned exactly how close is too close. One misstep could be fatal, but the reward is worth the risk. A single trapped fish can provide a substantial meal. Worms also play a major role in this shoreline economy. Some burrow into the sediment near the edge, extending their bodies to feed on decaying material without fully entering the brine. Others form dense clusters, their slow, deliberate movements contrasting sharply with the chaos that led to the food's arrival. To them, the lake is not a hazard, but a delivery system. What makes this boundary so unusual is how sharply defined it is. Unlike gradual transitions in many marine environments, the edge of a brine pool is abrupt. This creates a narrow zone where conditions change rapidly over short distances. Animals that can tolerate those changes position themselves carefully, exploiting the resources without crossing the line. It is ecological tightrope walking. These shoreline communities are not random. Over time, species that can handle the chemical and physical challenges of the boundary come to dominate. Others avoid the area entirely. The result is a specialized ecosystem shaped by proximity to danger. It is survival by precision, where knowing exactly where to stand is the difference between dinner and disaster. The interactions here are often surprisingly calm. There is no frantic feeding frenzy. Instead, animals move methodically, picking at remains, sharing space with others doing the same. The deep sea favors efficiency over drama. Energy is precious, and wasting it on conflict rarely pays off. The brine pool edge becomes a place of quiet cooperation, united by a common resource. This feeding dynamic also influences how nutrients move through the surrounding environment. As scavengers consume trapped animals, waste products and leftover material are redistributed into the sediment and water nearby. This supports smaller organisms, which in turn support others. A single brine pool can affect life well beyond its immediate boundary, acting as a focal point for biological activity in an otherwise sparse landscape. There is something oddly urban about it. The brine pool is the dangerous industrial zone no one lives in, while the shoreline becomes the bustling commercial district. Traffic flows in, resources are exchanged, and everyone leaves before staying too long. It is not a perfect analogy, but it captures the sense that this is a place defined by interaction rather than isolation. From a human perspective, the scene feels surreal. Crabs casually strolling along the edge of a lethal lake, worms dining beside a chemical abyss, all under crushing pressure and eternal darkness. It looks like a nature documentary filmed on another planet. And yet, it is just Earth doing what it always does, finding ways to reuse energy, even in the strangest places. The humor writes itself when you realize that the ocean has accidentally created a food court by being dangerous. No signs, no menus, just a lake that kills things, and a community that politely cleans up afterward. It is grim, efficient, and oddly elegant. By focusing on these shorelines, we see that brine pools are not isolated oddities. They are integrated into the broader ecosystem, shaping behavior, movement, and survival strategies. Even in places where life cannot exist directly, it finds a way to gather at the edges. Because in the deep sea, opportunity often lives right next to catastrophe. Just when you think brine pools have exhausted their list of unsettling qualities, chemistry clears its throat and steps into the spotlight. Around many of these lakes, the surrounding seafloor is infused with gases that would immediately ruin any dinner party. Methane and hydrogen sulfide seep from sediments near the pools, turning the area into a chemical minefield that smells, at least in theory, like something died twice and then apologized for it. Methane is a simple molecule, but in the deep sea it carries enormous significance. It often forms deep beneath the seafloor, trapped in sediments or released from geological processes that have nothing to do with life as we usually imagine it. When methane escapes upward, it can dissolve into surrounding waters or bubble slowly through the sediment, adding another layer of chemical complexity to an already bizarre environment. Hydrogen sulfide, on the other hand, is infamous. It is the compound responsible for the smell of rotten eggs, and it is toxic to many forms of life at surprisingly low concentrations. In most places, hydrogen sulfide is a sign of decay, produced when microbes break down organic material in oxygen-poor conditions. Near brine pools, however, it becomes part of a much larger chemical system. These gases tend to accumulate near brine pools because the same geological conditions that allow salt-rich fluids to seep upward also permit gases to escape. Cracks and faults in the seafloor act like slow-release valves, leaking methane and hydrogen sulfide into the surrounding environment. The result is a zone where chemistry feels less like background noise and more like an active character in the story. What makes this especially interesting is how these chemicals shape the local ecosystem. Methane and hydrogen sulfide are not just hazards, they are energy sources, fuels waiting to be tapped by organisms capable of using them. While many animals find these compounds toxic, certain microbes treat them like power outlets. This creates hotspots of biological activity clustered around chemical seeps. The presence of hydrogen sulfide also explains why these areas often look so alien. Sediments near the pools can appear discolored, coated with bacterial mats that thrive on these compounds. The seafloor may look pale, fuzzy, or strangely textured, as if it has been dusted with snow. That snow, however, is alive, built from microbes that specialize in turning toxic chemicals into usable energy. Methane plays a quieter but equally important role. In some cases, it becomes trapped in icy structures within the sediment, stable under the high pressure and low temperature of the deep sea. When conditions change slightly, methane can be released, feeding microbial communities and altering the chemistry of the surrounding water. It is a slow, steady contribution rather than a dramatic event, but over time, it matters. Together, methane and hydrogen sulfide help create chemical gradients around brine pools. These gradients define where different organisms can survive, where they gather, and where they absolutely refuse to go. Life in the deep sea often organizes itself around chemistry rather than geography, and here, chemistry draws very firm lines. There is also an important lesson hiding in the stench. On the surface, we associate bad smells with danger, decay, and things best avoided. In the deep ocean, those same smells signal opportunity for the right organisms. What is poison to one species is food to another. The deep sea does not moralize chemistry, it just uses it. From a human standpoint, it is almost funny how hostile this environment sounds. Lakes of deadly salt water surrounded by clouds of toxic gas, in total darkness, under crushing pressure. And yet, life persists, adapts, and organizes itself with remarkable efficiency. The ocean floor has essentially created the worst-smelling neighborhood imaginable, and still, residents have moved in and made it work. These chemicals also help scientists identify brine pool regions even before seeing them. Elevated levels of methane or hydrogen sulfide can act as chemical breadcrumbs, hinting that something unusual lies nearby. Follow the stink, and you might just find a lake where no lake should be. In the end, methane and hydrogen sulfide are reminders that the deep ocean runs on a different set of priorities. Beauty is optional, comfort is irrelevant, chemistry rules everything, and sometimes the most important processes shaping life happen in places that, if we could smell them, we would desperately want to leave. Once you accept that lakes can exist beneath oceans on Earth, your imagination naturally starts wandering off planet. Because if our own world can pull off something this strange, what might be happening on worlds that never asked for our approval in the first place? Brine pools, as it turns out, have become more than a deep-sea curiosity. They are now a reference point for how scientists think about alien oceans and the kinds of bizarre environments that might exist beyond Earth. Several icy moons in our solar system are believed to harbour vast oceans beneath their frozen surfaces. These oceans are hidden under kilometres of ice, completely sealed off from sunlight. If that sounds familiar, it should. The deep ocean on Earth is already dark, pressurized, and isolated, making it one of our best natural laboratories for imagining extraterrestrial seas. Brine pools fit neatly into that analogy because they demonstrate how complex chemistry can create layered liquid environments even in extreme conditions. On these distant worlds, salt is expected to be common. Geological processes, interactions between rock and water, and long-term chemical cycling all favor the accumulation of dissolved salts. That raises an intriguing possibility. If salt-rich fluids exist beneath alien ice shells, density differences could create stratified layers or even lake-like structures within subsurface oceans. In other words, brine pools might not be uniquely Earth's weird flex. They could be a universal feature of salty oceans. This idea has profound implications for the search for life. If life can exist in Earth's brine pools, then similar life could exist in chemically extreme pockets elsewhere. These environments might be isolated, chemically distinct, and powered by non-solar energy sources. From a biological perspective, that is a promising combination. Isolation can drive specialization, and chemical energy can sustain ecosystems without sunlight. The comparison also helps scientists refine their expectations. Rather than searching for vast, uniform alien oceans teeming with fish-like creatures, researchers consider the possibility of patchy habitability. Life might cluster around chemically active zones, avoid lethal pockets, and navigate invisible boundaries, much like organisms near brine pools do on Earth. If alien fish exist, they might indeed spend a lot of time nervously avoiding places that look like water, but very much are not. Brine pools also teach us caution. Environments that appear wet and inviting can be deadly. This matters when interpreting data from distant worlds. A signal that suggests liquid water does not automatically mean a hospitable environment. Chemistry matters. Density matters. Boundaries matter. Earth's brine pools remind us that water alone is not the whole story. There is also a philosophical angle here. Humans tend to imagine alien environments through the lens of surface life. We picture skies, landscapes, maybe even beaches. But most of the universe is cold, dark, and buried beneath layers of rock or ice. If life exists elsewhere, it may look less like a science fiction city and more like a microbial community clinging to the edge of a chemical gradient in an underground ocean. Not glamorous, but persistent. The humor in this comparison lies in its humility. We often imagine aliens as advanced, otherworldly beings. But brine pools suggest a more relatable possibility. Alien life might spend its existence cautiously navigating lethal puddles, making mistakes, and evolving around invisible hazards. The universe may be full of organisms thinking, in their own way, "Do not swim there, that is the bad water." By studying brine pools, scientists gain a framework for understanding how life and chemistry interact in places far removed from sunlight and surface conditions. These lakes become analogues, not because they are identical to alien environments, but because they demonstrate what is possible when water, salt, and geology collaborate. In the end, brine pools expand our imagination. They remind us that Earth is already stranger than most science fiction. And if our planet can hide poisonous lakes beneath its oceans, then the universe is probably doing far weirder things just out of view. Somewhere, in some dark ocean under alien ice, there may be a creature hovering at the edge of a shimmering boundary, learning the hard way that not all water is safe. To truly appreciate brine pools, it helps to stop thinking of them as modern oddities and start thinking of them as windows into deep time. These lakes are not just strange features of today's ocean. They are chemical echoes of Earth's distant past, preserving conditions that were once far more common when the planet was young and life was just figuring itself out. Early Earth was not the comfortable, oxygen-rich world we know now. The atmosphere was different. The oceans were chemically complex, often harsh, and frequently lacking the ingredients modern life takes for granted. Salinity levels varied wildly. Oxygen was scarce in many regions, and chemistry ruled ecosystems far more than sunlight. In many ways, brine pools resemble fragments of that ancient world, frozen in place by geology rather than time. What makes brine pools so valuable to scientists is their isolation. Once formed, these lakes can remain chemically distinct from the surrounding ocean for extremely long periods. That stability allows them to preserve unusual conditions that would normally be erased by mixing and circulation. In effect, they become natural laboratories where ancient-style chemistry continues to operate, uninterrupted by the modern ocean's more uniform behavior. By studying the chemistry inside and around brine pools, researchers can test ideas about how early life might have functioned. How did organisms survive in oxygen-poor environments? How did they extract energy from chemical reactions rather than sunlight? How did extreme salinity influence cellular structures? These are not abstract questions. They are written directly into the conditions of these lakes. Brine pools also highlight the kind of resilience early life would have needed. Surviving in such environments requires flexibility, innovation, and a willingness to live on the edge of habitability. Early organisms did not have the luxury of stable climates or predictable resources. They evolved in a world that constantly challenged their chemistry. Brine pools recreate that challenge in a modern setting. There is a certain bravery implied in this kind of life, even if it is metaphorical. To exist in a place that would instantly kill most organisms requires pushing biology to its limits. Cells had to develop ways to cope with chemical stress, maintain internal balance, and extract energy from unlikely sources. In that sense, early life was not just primitive, it was experimental. Brine pools also remind us that evolution does not always favor comfort, it favors success. If a harsh environment offers an opportunity with less competition, life will take it. Early Earth likely had many such niches, chemically extreme but resource-rich. Brine pools give us a glimpse of what those niches might have looked like. The time capsule metaphor is particularly fitting because these lakes do not just preserve chemistry, they preserve processes. The interactions between rock, water, and dissolved compounds mirror interactions that shape the early oceans. Studying them allows scientists to watch, in slow motion, how chemical environments influence biological possibilities. There is also a humbling realization here. The conditions we consider extreme today were once normal. Oxygen-rich oceans filled with complex animals are a relatively recent development in Earth's history. For most of the planet's existence, life thrived under conditions that would seem hostile to us. Brine pools flip our perspective, reminding us that normal is a moving target. From a storytelling standpoint, this chapter shifts the narrative from space to time. Instead of looking outward to alien worlds, we look backward to our own origins. The same lakes that seem so alien today may be closer to the environments that first gave rise to life on Earth. In that sense, brine pools are not out of place. We are. And then there is the humor in imagining early life as both brave and weird. Because it had to be. There was no instruction manual, no established ecosystems, just chemistry, trial and error, and a lot of things going wrong before something finally worked. Brine pools are reminders of that chaotic creativity. By studying these lakes, scientists are not just cataloguing a curiosity, they are piecing together a story that began billions of years ago. A story where life emerged not in gentle conditions, but in challenging ones. and where survival belonged to those willing to adapt to a world that did not care whether they existed or not. Standing at the edge of a brine pool is a bit like living next to a cliff that looks exactly like flat ground. One wrong step, and that is it. Yet despite this danger, some animals do not just visit these areas. They live there. They have evolved ways to survive right beside these lethal lakes, navigating invisible boundaries with impressive precision. This is evolution doing what it does best, turning risk into routine. The animals found near brine pools are not reckless. They are cautious specialists. Over generations, natural selection has favored individuals that can detect subtle environmental cues indicating where normal seawater ends and danger begins. Those that misjudge the boundary do not pass on their genes. The result is a population finely tuned to read chemical and physical warning signs most of us would never notice. One key adaptation lies in sensory perception. Some animals can detect slight changes in water chemistry using specialized receptors. These receptors allow them to sense shifts in salinity or other dissolved compounds before their bodies are fully exposed. To them, the edge of a brine pool does not feel invisible. It feels like a sharp signal saying, "Do not go any farther." Behavioral adaptations are just as important. Many animals approach brine pool boundaries slowly and deliberately. They test the water, often extending parts of their bodies forward before committing their full weight. This cautious probing allows them to gather information without crossing the line. It is the deep sea equivalent of dipping a toe into suspicious water, rather than diving headfirst. Some species have also adapted their movement patterns. They position themselves above the seafloor or along slopes where accidental entry is less likely. Others anchor themselves using body structures that provide stability near the boundary. These strategies reduce the chance of slipping or being nudged into the brine by currents or other animals. There is also evidence that experience plays a role. Animals that spend time near brine pools appear to learn the layout of the environment. They remember where the dangerous zones are and avoid them with increasing accuracy. This learned behavior complements their physical adaptations, creating a combined strategy for survival. What is especially fascinating is how these adaptations shape social behavior. Animals near brine pools often space themselves carefully, avoiding crowded conditions that could increase the risk of accidental contact. Feeding, movement, and interaction all become more deliberate. The environment enforces a kind of discipline, rewarding precision and punishing carelessness. From an evolutionary perspective, this is a masterclass in selective pressure. The brine pool does not chase prey or actively kill animals. It simply exists. And yet, its presence reshapes behavior, anatomy, and survival strategies in the surrounding community. Over time, those changes become ingrained, passed down through generations as instinct. There is also an ironic advantage to living near danger. The same feature that makes brine pools deadly also makes them relatively predictable. Unlike mobile predators, a brine pool does not change location. Once an animal learns where the boundary is, it stays there. This predictability allows for long-term adaptation, something evolution excels at exploiting. The humor in all of this comes from imagining evolution as a very strict teacher. Lesson 1. Do not fall in the lake. Lesson 2. If you fall in the lake, you are done. Lesson 3. Remember Lesson 1. Over millions of years, that curriculum produces animals that treat invisible chemical boundaries with the respect most humans reserve for visible cliffs. This chapter highlights a broader truth about evolution. Adaptation does not always mean becoming stronger, faster, or bigger. Sometimes it means becoming better at noticing danger and knowing exactly when to stop. Survival is often about restraint. By watching how animals behave near brine pools, scientists gain insight into how life responds to environmental hazards without the ability to change them. The lake will not become safer. The animals must become smarter. And they do. In the end, these creatures demonstrate that even in the most hostile environments, life finds a way, not by ignoring danger, but by understanding it. Evolution reads the warning signs, underlines them, and makes sure they are never forgotten. In an environment as dynamic as the ocean, permanence feels almost suspicious. Currents shift, sediments move, ecosystems rise and fall. And yet, brine pools persist. Not for decades, not for centuries, but for thousands of years. They sit quietly on the seafloor, holding their shape, maintaining their chemistry, and generally refusing to break up. The question is not just how they form, but how they manage to stay together for so long. The answer lies in a combination of balance, isolation, and patience. Brine pools are not static in the sense of being frozen in time, but they are dynamically stable. Their continued existence depends on a steady relationship between input and loss. As long as brine continues to seep upward from below and the rate of mixing remains low, the pool maintains its identity. It does not need dramatic reinforcement, just consistency. One major factor in this longevity is the absence of strong disturbances in the deep sea. Unlike surface waters, the abyss is rarely shaken by storms or sudden changes. The energy reaching these depths is minimal. Without powerful forces to disrupt them, brine pools are free to exist in a kind of geological calm. They are not sheltered by walls, but by distance from chaos. The surrounding environment also plays a protective role. The shape of the seafloor can cradle a brine pool, preventing it from spreading or draining away. Depressions, basins, and natural barriers act as quiet guardians, ensuring the pool stays where it belongs. Over time, this physical stability becomes self-reinforcing. The pool fits the landscape, and the landscape accommodates the pool. Chemical equilibrium is another key ingredient. Inside the brine pool, reactions occur slowly. The lack of mixing means that changes happen at a glacial pace. Unlike surface environments where conditions fluctuate daily, brine pools experience remarkable consistency. This stability allows them to persist with minimal variation, year after year, century after century. There is also a feedback loop at work. The same density that keeps the brine in place also protects it from being diluted. Attempts at mixing are energetically unfavorable, so the system resists change. It is not that mixing never happens. It is that it happens so slowly that, on human timescales, the pool appears eternal. From a human perspective, this kind of stability is astonishing. We are used to environments changing rapidly. Coastlines erode, rivers shift. Even lakes on land can dry up or overflow within a few generations. Brine pools, by contrast, operate on a timescale that makes human history feel like a blink. The joke about human relationships lands because it highlights this contrast. These lakes endure without communication, compromise, or counseling. They simply exist in balance, governed by physics and chemistry rather than emotion. It turns out that being extremely salty and refusing to mix is a surprisingly effective long-term strategy. But there is a deeper lesson here. Stability does not require stasis. Brine pools are maintained through ongoing processes. Brine seeps in, Minor losses occur. Chemical reactions continue. The system is active, just slow. Longevity comes from steady conditions, not from being frozen in time. This has important implications for how scientists think about long-lived environments. If something as fragile-looking as a liquid boundary can persist for millennia, then the deep sea may host many more stable features than we realize. Stability does not always announce itself with rigidity. Sometimes it looks like quiet persistence. Brine pools also remind us that time behaves differently in the deep ocean. Processes that would rapidly erase features at the surface unfold slowly here. Change still happens, but it whispers instead of shouting. This makes the deep sea a kind of archive, preserving structures and conditions long after they would have vanished elsewhere. By the end of this chapter, brine pools feel less like anomalies and more like fixtures. They are not fleeting accidents. They are long-term residents of the seafloor, shaped by forces that favor patience over drama. So while human relationships struggle under the weight of constant change, brine pools thrive by embracing consistency. They stay salty, they stay heavy, they stay put. And in a world defined by motion, that stubborn stability is what allows them to last. At first glance, brine pools do not seem like places where you would go looking for medical breakthroughs. They are toxic, dark, and hostile, the kind of environment a movie villain would choose for a secret base. And yet, history has taught science a consistent lesson. The most extreme environments often produce the most useful biological tools. Brine pools are no exception. In fact, they may be quietly stockpiling solutions to problems we have not solved yet. The key lies in the organisms that survive there. Life in brine pools operates under conditions that would destroy ordinary cells. High salinity, unusual chemistry, and constant stress force these organisms to evolve unique molecular strategies just to stay functional. Those strategies are exactly what interest biotechnologists and medical researchers. Proteins, for example, are notoriously sensitive. Change the environment too much, and they unravel. Yet organisms associated with brine pools produce proteins that remain stable and active in conditions that would disable most others. Understanding how these proteins maintain their structure could inform the design of more robust enzymes for industrial and medical use. Enzymes that do not fall apart easily are extremely valuable, whether they are cleaning up pollution or helping manufacture drugs. Cell membranes offer another area of interest. Maintaining a stable internal environment in a highly saline setting requires specialized membrane structures. These adaptations could inspire new ways to protect human cells or deliver drugs more effectively. If a microbe can keep its internal chemistry balanced in a chemical nightmare, there may be lessons there for treating conditions where cellular balance breaks down. There is also growing interest in how these organisms manage stress at the molecular level. Life near brine pools is constantly under chemical pressure. The systems that allow cells to repair damage, regulate internal processes, and avoid catastrophic failure are finely tuned. Studying these systems could lead to insights into aging, disease resistance, and cellular resilience. The deep sea has already contributed to medicine in surprising ways. Compounds derived from marine organisms have been used in cancer research, pain management, and antiviral treatments. Brine pool ecosystems expand that potential by offering access to organisms that operate at the edge of what biology allows. These are not average microbes. They are specialists forged by extreme selection pressures. There is also the possibility of discovering entirely new biochemical pathways. Life in brine pools may rely on reactions that are rare or absent in more familiar environments. Mapping these pathways could reveal new targets for drug development or new methods for synthesizing complex molecules. In science, novelty is often where progress hides. Of course, accessing these environments is not easy. Sampling brine pools requires advanced equipment, careful planning, and a willingness to deal with conditions that can damage instruments as easily as they damage organisms. But the payoff could be substantial. The deeper we look, the more we realize that Earth's extremes are not barren. They are specialized. The humor in this chapter comes from the contrast. We tend to imagine medical breakthroughs emerging from clean laboratories and carefully controlled experiments. The idea that answers to human health problems might come from a poisonous underwater lake feels absurd. And yet that absurdity has precedent. Penicillin came from mold. Brine pools might offer the deep sea equivalent. There is also a philosophical shift here. Studying brine pools forces us to broaden our definition of useful environments. Value is not limited to comfort or familiarity. Sometimes, the most valuable insights come from places that push life to its limits. The conditions that seem hostile to us are exactly what make these ecosystems so biologically inventive. By exploring brine pools, scientists are not just cataloguing strange life. They are expanding the toolbox of biology. Each adaptation is a potential solution waiting to be understood and repurposed. Each organism is a case study in resilience. So while brine pools may look like science fiction hazards, they are also libraries of biological innovation. Hidden beneath the ocean, in places no human could survive unaided, are molecular tricks refined over thousands of years. And if history is any guide, those tricks may one day help solve very human problems. Sometimes, the cure really does come from the scariest place in the room. There are moments in science when data fits neatly into expectation, and then there are moments when the mind stalls. Seeing a lake at the bottom of the ocean belongs firmly in the second category. Researchers who encounter brine pools for the first time often describe a strange mental pause, a brief but powerful sense that something has gone wrong with reality. The instruments say everything is fine, the visuals say everything is wrong. Human perception is built on patterns learned over a lifetime. Water behaves a certain way. Lakes sit in air. Oceans are continuous. When those rules are violated, the brain does not immediately adjust. Instead, it hesitates. This hesitation is not confusion in the usual sense. It is a deeper cognitive dissonance, the feeling that the mental model you rely on no longer applies. For researchers watching live footage from submersibles, this moment can be surprisingly emotional. Some describe excitement, others unease, and many report both at the same time. There is wonder in discovering something new, but also discomfort in realizing how incomplete your understanding of the world still is. The ocean has just revealed a secret, and it is not interested in explaining itself. This psychological impact is amplified by the environment itself. The deep sea is already isolating. It is dark, silent, and physically inaccessible. Researchers are separated from the scene by layers of technology, watching through screens as machines descend into places no human body can go. When something impossible appears on those screens, the sense of distance collapses. It feels personal. There is also a subtle loss of authority that comes with these moments. Scientists are trained experts. They are supposed to know what is possible. Encountering an underwater lake forces a temporary surrender of that confidence. For a brief moment, everyone in the room is just a human reacting to something deeply unexpected. Some researchers report laughter in these moments, Not because the situation is funny, but because laughter is a common response to cognitive overload. Others go quiet, staring at the screen, trying to reconcile what they are seeing. The brain, like an old computer, considers restarting the system entirely. This reaction is important. It highlights the role of emotion in scientific discovery. Science is often portrayed as purely rational, but moments like this reveal how deeply human it is. Surprise, awe, and even discomfort play a role in how we process new information. They force us to slow down, question assumptions, and look more carefully. Over time, the shock fades. The lake becomes a data point, a subject of papers and presentations. But many researchers remember that first encounter vividly. It becomes a reference moment, a reminder of why they chose to explore the unknown in the first place. Few careers offer the chance to genuinely rethink how the world works. There is also a psychological recalibration that happens afterward. Once you have seen something like a brine pool, the idea of the ocean as a uniform environment becomes harder to maintain. The mind adjusts, expanding its sense of what is possible. This expansion is one of the hidden rewards of exploration. The world feels larger, more complex, and more interesting. The humor in this chapter lies in that mental reboot. Everyone has experienced a moment when reality does not line up with expectation, like realizing the stairs you were about to step on do not exist. Multiply that feeling by 1,000, add crushing pressure and total darkness, and you get the brine pool effect. By examining the psychological impact of these discoveries, we are reminded that exploration is not just about mapping places. It is about mapping our own assumptions. Brine pools do not just challenge physics and chemistry, they challenge the way we think. In the end, these lakes offer researchers a rare gift. They provide a moment of genuine surprise in a world increasingly explained. A reminder that Earth still holds experiences capable of stunning even the most prepared minds. And sometimes, the most important discovery is realizing that your brain needs a moment to catch up. By now, brine pools might feel familiar, even approachable in their own lethal science fiction way. But it is important to remember just how uncommon they are. You can cross entire ocean basins without ever encountering one. They are not scattered evenly across the seafloor like pebbles on a beach. They appear only where a very specific set of geological and chemical conditions line up just right. Rarity, in this case, is not a flaw. It is the point. Brine pools require an unusual convergence of deep salt deposits, slow geological movement, and just the right pathways for fluids to migrate upward without dispersing. Most of the ocean floor does not cooperate in this way. Either the salt never accumulates, the pathways never form, or the chemistry never stabilizes. The result is that brine pools emerge only in select regions, like hidden rooms in a very large house. And yet, despite their scarcity, their importance stretches far beyond their physical footprint. Brine pools act as concentrated hubs of chemical and biological activity. They influence local ecosystems, alter surrounding chemistry, and create sharp environmental gradients that would not exist otherwise. Their impact is disproportionate to their size, much like a single loose screw that somehow holds an entire machine together. On a global scale, brine pools help scientists understand how localized extremes can shape broader systems. The ocean is often described as interconnected, and that is true, but that connection does not erase local uniqueness. Brine pools prove that small, isolated environments can still matter. They demonstrate that the ocean is not just one big blended soup, but a mosaic of micro-worlds, each with its own rules. There is also a lesson here about discovery itself. Brine pools were not found because scientists expected them. They were found because people were curious enough to look closely at places that seemed unremarkable at first glance. This reminds us that Earth's remaining secrets are not necessarily hidden by distance alone. Sometimes they are hidden by assumption. The couch metaphor fits because the planet often feels familiar. We map it, measure it, and model it. But just like spare change wedged between cushions, some things escape notice simply because no one thought to check there. Brine pools are reminders that even a well-studied planet can still surprise us when we slow down and look carefully. Their global importance also lies in comparison. By understanding why brine pools form in some places and not others, scientists refine their understanding of Earth's internal processes. Absence becomes just as informative as presence. Where brine pools do not exist, tells us something about the structure and history of the seafloor, just as much as where they do. There is a quiet humility baked into this realization. We tend to think of Earth as thoroughly explored, especially compared to distant planets or galaxies. But brine pools reveal how much complexity still exists in environments we rarely visit. The deep ocean remains one of the least understood parts of our world, not because it is unimportant, but because it is difficult. The humor here is gentle but pointed. We imagine Earth as tidy and predictable, yet it keeps surprising us by revealing bizarre features in places we assumed were already accounted for. It is like finding spare change in a couch you have owned for years and wondering how it got there. The answer is usually that you never really looked. Brine pools also serve as reminders of scale. Global importance does not always mean global visibility. Some of the most influential processes happen quietly, in isolation, far from human attention. The ocean does not need an audience to do something remarkable. As we zoom out, brine pools become symbols rather than just features. They symbolize the limits of our knowledge, the rewards of exploration, and the reality that Earth is still an active, evolving system full of surprises. They tell us that rarity does not equal irrelevance. In the end, this chapter is about perspective. Brine pools may be few, but they punch far above their weight in scientific value. They challenge assumptions, enrich understanding, and quietly remind us that the planet we call home still has mysteries tucked away, waiting for someone curious enough to lift the cushions. By the time you reach the end of this journey, the idea of a lake sitting calmly at the bottom of the ocean no longer sounds impossible. It still sounds strange, but the shock has shifted into something deeper. Understanding has a way of doing that. It does not remove wonder, it refines it. And brine pools, in all their unsettling glory, are perfect examples of how nature resists our tidy categories. For most of human history, lakes have belonged to land. They have shores you can walk along, surfaces you can reflect on, and boundaries you can see. The ocean, by contrast, was imagined as one continuous body, vast and uniform beneath the waves. Underwater lakes shatter that mental map. They force us to admit that our definitions are based more on habit than on reality. These lakes do not care what we expect. They exist because physics allows them to exist. Chemistry does the paperwork, geology signs off, and the ocean shrugs and moves on. Nature is not concerned with whether something feels out of place to us. It operates on rules that often lead to outcomes we would never design intentionally. What makes this realization powerful is how it echoes beyond the deep sea. If lakes can exist underwater, what other assumptions are quietly waiting to be challenged? How many features of our world go unnoticed simply because they do not fit the mental boxes we have built? Brine pools remind us that discovery is often about unlearning as much as learning. There is also a kind of creative joy in recognizing this. The ocean is not just deep, it is imaginative. It takes familiar concepts and recombines them in ways that feel almost playful. A lake inside an ocean feels like a cosmic prank, the kind of thing nature does just to see if anyone is paying attention. The humor here is affectionate rather than mocking. Calling the ocean creatively unhinged is a way of acknowledging that complexity does not always present itself neatly. Sometimes it presents itself as a shimmering boundary that looks like water but acts like a wall. Sometimes it presents itself as a feature that seems to break the rules until you realize the rules were never that simple. This final chapter is not about adding new facts. It is about sitting with the implications of what you have already learned. Brine pools are reminders that Earth is not finished revealing itself. Even now, beneath miles of water, it is still experimenting, still generating environments that push the limits of our understanding. There is also a quiet emotional payoff in this realization. It reconnects us with a sense of curiosity that can be easy to lose. In a world saturated with information, genuine mystery feels rare. Underwater lakes bring that mystery back, not through speculation, but through reality itself. They also reframe our relationship with the ocean. It is not just a backdrop or a resource. It is an active participant in Earth's story, capable of producing phenomena that rival anything imagined for other planets. You do not need to look to the stars to find alien landscapes. Sometimes they are already here, hiding in the dark. As the script closes, the listener is left with an image that lingers. Somewhere far below, a lake sits in silence, surrounded by water, defying intuition. It does not ripple in the wind. It has no sky above it. And yet, it exists, perfectly content in its strangeness. That image is the point. It invites humility, curiosity, and a renewed sense of wonder. The ocean is not just deep, it is inventive. It challenges our expectations, not because it wants to confuse us, but because reality is richer than our categories. And once you accept that, the world feels a little bigger, a little stranger, and a lot more interesting than it did before.